Should we wait till the next scene Eric shows up in, or should we talk about Eric now?
We can talk about Eric now. Go for it.
Because Eric was one of the most important parts of the discussion surrounding this film when it came out, because I heard a lot of people talking about he's Marvel's new best villain, he's so sympathetic, he's so three-dimensional and well-rounded, it's hard not to see him as the actual hero of the film.
When he's Black Hitler.
I don't understand this at all. The man is a complete maniac. Not only that, he's incredibly two-dimensional, shows no depth of emotions in the way that Robert Jordan, is it who plays him?
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan, sorry. I think Robert Jordan's a fantasy author.
Oh, okay.
Michael
constructs better worlds than this, I'm sure.
Absolutely, he does. Michael B. Jordan plays him very one-dimensional. He's always angry. He's always going on about his grievances.
Walking around like he shits his pants all the time.
There is that as well. In terms of his characterization, he's very one-dimensional. He has one task that he's dedicated to, which is take over Wakanda, and then immediately after that, literally take over the world. One of the first actions that we see him take after this scene is when he is confronting Claw to try and get to Wakanda, and Claw takes his girlfriend hostage. And instead of trying to negotiate, to talk around it, or do something fancy to kill Claw without hurting his girlfriend, he just shoots his girlfriend.
He blows her brains out,
He just shoots his girlfriend. Well, of course, blows her brains out. I mean, this is an incredibly bloodless film. Which makes the stakes feel much less real.
Massive body count, considering.
Massive body count, but incredibly bloodless, because we can't escape that PG-13 rating. No. He shoots his girlfriend in the head, shows no remorse whatsoever.
Not even mentioned for the rest of the film.
And then the only thing that I can see as being even slightly redeeming to most of the people who are going on about him is that he repeats BLM talking points. That is the incredibly low barrier to entry that people see for becoming a sympathetic anti-hero, not even potentially anti-hero for most people, hero, is that he wants to kill Whitey. And you are absolutely right that it is quite worrying that this seemed to have such a deep resonance with so many Black Americans, because it really does reveal something slightly worrying, which is that the resentment and grievance that they have been propagandized into believing, because as Thomas Sowell always points out, that you go back to the 1950s, and even in the midst of Jim Crow, Black Americans were doing a fantastic job pulling themselves up by their own standards, establishing their own standards for excellence, and being entrepreneurial. And it's only after the 1960s and the Civil Rights Act that all of a sudden you see conditions in black neighborhoods absolutely tank. And from that period onwards, instead of recognizing that, hold up, maybe it's not just because white people hate us that we're failing, maybe there's something about the culture that we immerse ourselves in, they go, no, it's just Whitey's fault. And it's got so pathologic to the point where they can look at somebody like Killmonger and go, he's who I want to be.
Well, something he says, word for word here, he says to the Wakandans sitting in the palace when he's led in cuffs, "You're sitting up here comfortable, must feel good. There's about 2 billion people all over the world that look like us, but their lives are a lot harder. Wakanda has the tools to liberate them all." So that's just the Ibrahim X. Kendi opinion of creating an international capital B black dictatorship of the proletariat. And as we both said, it's worrying that the implication is Black Americans resonated with this, because if the chip on the shoulder is big enough that if you got spaceships and sonic weapons, they'd kill us all tomorrow. That's actually quite concerning.
That's concerning to me. I know at the beginning I said that this wasn't my least favourite and I didn't hate it. The more we talk about it, I'm really starting to develop a hatred for this film.
But I rank films hierarchically, right? So I think Batman and Robin is nowhere near as bad a film as Black Panther. Because Batman and Robin is really stupid. It's actually embarrassingly incompetently made.
It's a self-contained stupid,
No,
though.
it's not offensive. It's not actively trying to hate me. So there's a new class of film that is not only pissing on existing continuity and properties I like, but is demonizing me as the villain for how I was born. So I will not even... It doesn't matter how much money was poured into this. It didn't matter if the CGI didn't look like Ratchet and Clank 3. It matters that you hate me, and this is a propaganda piece. And that is why it is one of the worst films ever made. It's incompetent and it's malicious. That's the problem with it. So, we'll loop back in the plot, shall we? Trial by combat. Why? In an advanced scientific society, would you want to select for the most violent person among you to be your king? And also, would it not be better for the king to not be the Black Panther, because then you have a dedicated king who's there at all times, not running around in a Batman suit beating people up in neighbouring countries?
when we're supposedly an isolationist nation.
Yeah, he literally goes after his ex-girlfriend's self-mission in Nigeria.
We always have to come back to that, because once again, if this was a self-contained story about Wakanda and a potential attempt to overthrow the current ruling power, in very much the way that this is basically just an adaptation of the Lion King's narrative.
Kind of.
Well, obviously with a lot of bells and whistles attached, but it's very similar. If it was more just close to something like Hamlet or the Lion King, self-contained within Wakanda, you wouldn't have all of these problems. It's the need to make it a global story about how isolationism is bad because, don't you realize you could be helping so many people? The one of the guys played by Daniel Kaluuya, Wakabi.
He's based.
Well,
Until
his first scene, he's based because T'Challa's talking to him like she keeps telling me that I need to...
Is he French?
Don't
even try it, Harry.
Some Africans speak French, so, you know... he's like, this woman, Lupita Nyong'o, keeps telling me that we need to be doing more for the world and like accepting refugees. And Wakabi is just like,
he says, you let the refugees in, they bring their problems with them.
More like what? Foreign aid, refugee programs. You let the refugees in, they bring their problems with them.
Based and true.
Yep.
And he was the character I immediately was like, I agree with him. But guess what? By the end of the film, he's somehow switched sides to Killmonger's side, which is the overtly imperialistic, no longer isolationist, we need to solve the world's problems. It's kind of the George Bush neocon. We need to go out and solve the world's problem. We need to bring liberation to the blacks of the world.
Make the world safe for democracy.
Yeah, basically,
it's that position.
It's that kind of position that he's taking. He switches over to that side without any explanation, any character development. Literally, he just shows up at the side of Killmonger when Killmonger shows up in Wakanda, and he's just on his side.
Yeah, it's personal grievance, that's it. Though, to be fair, after he says the refugees one, and he then says the completely incongruous sentence of, and then Wakanda is like everywhere else, if you let the refugees in. Now, if you said you wanted me and my men to go out there and clean up the world, I'd be all for it.
Now, if you said you wanted me and my men to go out there and clean up the world, then I'd be all for it.
So you've just said we want to be isolationists because we don't want to let people in because the Wakanda will be a mess, like all of refugee-flooded Europe. However, if you want us to imperialize everywhere, then I'll do it. So...
yeah, these two statements do not fit together.
One of these things is not like the other.
And I don't think the writers realised when they were writing it.
Really?
I know.
Actually, I think one of the best instances of writing incompetence is this weird flower mechanic, because we've already touched on part of that. But then I like the idea, I can't remember who pointed this out in their coverage of it, but how did King T'Chaka die in Civil War if this flower thing existed? Did they like force him to drink the antidote just because he's old and couldn't run around?
Why didn't T'Challa have some miracle balls on him? You know,
all that fix his spine,
That massive explosion that blew off half of your stomach. Well, I'll just stuff some balls in there and then you'll be perfectly fine.
What was that about monkeypox? But also the idea of like, okay, so they took the powers away from the king even though he's old, so that could have extended his lifespan and made him disease resistant, even if he's not running around as Black Panther. Then I thought you had to be king to be Black Panther, but T'Challa was already Black Panther before he was king because he was prince at the UN.
Why didn't T'Chaka just have his Black Panther suit ready for the first sign of trouble when there's like...
yeah, underneath it, yeah.
We're talking about whether we need to sanction international superheroes. Maybe one could be annoyed at this and try and attack us. Oh, I best come prepared just in case.
Yeah, and wouldn't his father have to have abdicated for T'Challa to have already drank the flower and be Black Panther? But then why did he have to then be coronated in a fight?
I think it's best we don't dwell on these questions. There are no answers.
I'm just bringing it up as more points as to why the film
writings, there is no answers to these questions.
I'm bringing it up merely so that Black Americans don't put this on a pedestal, because not only does it gin up resentment where it isn't warranted, but it's also a really stupid film. And if you exalt this as a landmark piece of a fractionated part of American culture, you think this is one of your best entries into your mythologized historical lineage, then it's shit. It's rubbish. Stop putting it on a pedestal. It's awful. And in the next one, it's not better just because you're fighting Mexican Namor.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.